hopefully that clears up a little bit about why they're allowed to compete in sport. It wasn't that. What's going on YouTube, it's Jason, and in this video we are going to be discussing Imane Khelif and Lin Yuting's recent gold medal victories at the Olympics and explore some of the wider issues of gender and sport. So let's start by setting the scene. Both of these women were born as women and have always competed as women. But last year in the World Boxing Championships, they were disqualified from competition because they didn't meet certain gender eligibility tests. Essentially, these tests explore chromosomes. Women have XX chromosomes, men have XY chromosomes. Typically, both of these women came back with X and Y chromosomes. The weirdest thing about it is that Khelif initially appealed the decision and then withdrew her appeal, and Yuting didn't appeal it at all. Now, for me, this is the first thing that's slightly questionable. Like, if someone said, Jason, you're a woman, and I was in competition, I would definitely contest that. I'd be like, I'm not a woman, I can prove it, I'm a man, I've been a man all my life. But yeah, essentially, because both of them in the end didn't end up going through with appeals, the decision stood and they were banned. Now, before we go any further into the grey areas and nuances as to why they were allowed to compete, I just wanted to set the record straight. A lot of people in this day and age are trying to make the argument that men and women are the same. Fundamentally, every scientific study has shown this to not be true. We have fundamental differences in power, in strength, even in the size of our heart and the size of our lungs. All of the things that make men men make them perform better at sport. And so even testosterone, the male dominant hormone, is banned in competition. Why? Because if men take testosterone, they will outperform men, all things being equal. If women take testosterone, they will outperform other women, all things being equal. So essentially, the more male you become, the more of a competitive advantage you have in sport. That's not my opinion, that is scientific, and that's why testosterone is banned. So it begs the question, if these women had XY chromosomes, why on earth were they allowed to compete against other women? Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, there is speculation that they may have a condition called differences in sexual development disorder. It's a rare condition that affects the genes, the reproductive organs, and the hormones. When you look into the available science on this condition, which to be honest is limited because it is a rare condition, what you see is that the XY chromosome has an SRY gene attached to it. And it's this SRY gene that apparently makes a man a man. Not all women who have XY chromosomes have this SRY gene attached. And so essentially, you may get a situation where some women do have the SRY gene attached and therefore they develop testosterone in puberty, and some don't. Caster Semenya, the 800 meter runner, is a present day example of someone who suffered from DSD but did have the male characteristics, so she would have had that SRY gene. And being frank, she absolutely destroyed the competition. Like, she was winning races by 3, 4, and 5 seconds. Like, it was crazy. And when you looked into her situation, she actually had testicles inside her. So the testicles, everyone knows, produces, well, if you don't know, they produce testosterone in the male body. She had hers inside her body, so they weren't outside the body. Her balls didn't officially drop, so she wasn't officially a man, but she would have benefited from a lot of the testosterone benefits going through puberty, etc., and so would have had an unfair advantage over women. And this is where, for me, it does start to get a little bit annoying, in that if you get a woman who has woken up at 4 a.m. and trained for 4 years, and another woman did that but then injected testosterone, if they tested the woman with testosterone, she would be banned from competition because she would have a competitive edge. Yet, if one of these women, Semenya, Yuting, or Khelif, are naturally born with this condition and therefore have more testosterone in them than the average woman, because they didn't inject it and they were born with it, they are okay to compete against women. How does that make any sense? And in fairness to Khelif and Yutang, we don't know what side of the DSD fence they sit on. Are they those that have the XY chromosomes with no SRY gene attached, in which case they don't benefit from all the characteristics of being male, or are they those that do have the SRY gene attached and so do have a massive competitive edge over other women? But this is why it does, again, annoy me a little bit that they were allowed to compete. Not because I'm saying that they're men, but if we don't know what side of the fence they sit on, then yes, they may be those that don't benefit from the SRY gene, but they could also be people that benefit from the SRY gene, have testicles in their body, like Caster Semenya, and then would have testosterone at the level at which somebody who injects testosterone would have. So in that case, I feel they should have not allowed them to compete. I'm not saying that they should compete against men necessarily, because they were born as women, but we shouldn't allow them to compete against women until we have further information. And this is what Alan Williams, who is a professor of sport and exercise genomics, argued. He said we should test for the SRY gene, we should test for hormones, and how those hormones respond to the body, because this is going to let us know whether or not they should compete in sport. If all we were interested in was fairness, this is what should have happened. The reason it didn't happen is because there appears to be certain people with an agenda, whether that's in the IOC or outside the IOC. This idea that anybody who identifies as such is such. So if I today identified as a dog, I'm a dog. But I think the best thing to do for the progression of the sport is to actually remove the gender conversation from everything and just stick to the body, the biological differences, and say, hey, if your testosterone level is at a certain level, you know, banned in women competition, we shouldn't allow you to compete against women. Whether we make our own category for you or you don't compete at all, that's your prerogative. But if there's a clear unfair advantage, I mean, way back, the Western German team, the women were on steroids and they were absolutely destroying it at the Olympics. Of course, eventually medals were removed because they were like, hold on, you were doubling the test levels of women. This is unfair. If someone hasn't injected but has those levels, as I said, they shouldn't be allowed to compete against people that don't have them. Don't even get in the debate about gender. Are you a tree? Are you a leaf? Are you a woman or a man? Irrelevant. Biologically, what are we saying? And I think it should end there, because Khelif fought this lady in the first round, and again, we don't know what side of the fence she sits on, but she hit this lady in the face, and within 45 seconds, the lady pulled out and was like, I'd never been hit so hard by an opponent. She didn't say by a woman, because I think she was like, yeah, this woman's a boxer, she's taking hits to the head, right? When you get punched by a bloke, you know, right? So whether or not she is or isn't, it's like, we should have explored that before putting her in the competition, and we should think about equality and fairness. We get so excited about it in the men's game. We ban, you know, athletes like Justin Gatlin, Maurice Green for being enhanced, but we don't see the enhancement when someone is born with it. So yeah, that's my opinion anyway. A bit of a rant, but I guess hopefully that clears up a little bit about why they were allowed to compete in sport. It wasn't that they were blatantly men and were just allowed to compete. It's that they were in this grey area, and rather than clarifying the grey area, they thought they'd allow them to compete anyway to satisfy the woke brigade, essentially. That's what it was. They satisfied the woke brigade because the backlash would have been too much if they said, hey, can you guys sit this one out? That's my opinion anyway. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think they should have been allowed to compete? Do you think they should have been banned? Do you think that further investigation should have been made? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to my channel to follow me on this journey, and I'll see you again soon.